This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 313.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? One of the best parts of having a podcast like this is making friends. One of the friends that I've recently made goes by the name of John Simpson. He was on show 299 and he's back. One of the reasons I wanted him back is we've been talking a lot throughout, since we met after show 299. And we talk about sales engineering, but we're also talking about the macro environment and how things affect sales engineering. So I wanted him to come on the show and actually discuss that with me and share his thoughts about how the economy is impacting sales engineers, how having a bad, we never talked about having a bad boss, but the rule of 40, right? Outsourcing, all that stuff. So he came in and we just had a chat, and it's always great to talk to John. And with that, let's jump into the show. Mr. Simpson, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Ramsey. Great to be here.
You're one of three Johns, as I understand, in London, right?
One of three John Simpsons. There might be quite a few Johns in London.
That's what I meant. John Simpsons, but you're the best one.
Well, I don't know the other two, so that would be very presumptuous.
Well, I'll presume it on your behalf. So you were on episode show 299, where we talked about career progression for sales engineers, and you and I we've been talking almost every week because we're working on something together, which we'll announce at a later date. But part of the conversation, we started talking about the SE big picture.
Yeah.
And I figured that's something we can share with everybody listening. So let's start off by when you say SE big picture, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, great question, Ramsey. So let me just give you a little bit of that. So I'm going to start with big picture. So big picture for me is all about what is happening out there in the world. And there's a lot going on at the moment because that impacts the businesses that we work for and the markets that we sell into, which then impacts individual SEs and SE leaders. And then what I'm going to do is actually talk about some of the things that I think we can do in terms of preparing for that and taking advantage of some of those impacts.
Okay. All right. So we'll go into details, but just as a brief explanation in my own head, 2022, great year. Everybody was buying. SE teams grew.
Yeah.
2023, no one was buying. Interest rates went up. SE teams shrunk. Is that kind of where we're going?
No, absolutely, that is where we're going. And don't forget that 2022, we're coming out of the pandemic as well, which obviously is that was started in 2020, probably finished in 2022. So there was a real atmosphere of hey, we're out of a really bad, dark time. Things are looking good.
Right. So, which is good. We're talking about not that there was a pandemic or recession or anything, but because me as an individual contributor, it affected me in a way. All right, my customers aren't buying as much. I'm not making as much commission, but that was it, right? But there's a whole world that's happening, and through EDSEs talking to other people, I can see all right, there are things outside of our control. So let's talk about drivers for change, as you called them last time.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. What does that mean, and where can you take it?
The thing that impacts us on a macro level most is really the economy. And some people who are listening may never have experienced an economic downturn because we have had a massive growth period for many years. If you actually look back, there's been a number of blips in the economy, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those. But I think in 2022, 2023, we definitely experienced one of those downturns in our industry. So started in 22, hit in 2023. And what I think is happening is we're now starting to see some green shoots in 2024. I don't know if you're picking that up from some of the conversations you're having.
Well, maybe I am. Just you might need to explain to me what green shoots mean.
Sorry, coming from a farming background, Ramsey, green shoots are when things are starting to grow. So, like, you plant things
Okay.
in the soil. The green shoots are a good sign because it means that you're going to have things growing and harvest in the
Okay.
future.
So okay. Now that I understand what green shoots stands for, I'm in a weird spot where I'm seeing both green shoots and still like bad news happening at the same time. It's like these
Yes.
companies are hiring, and at the same time, these companies are firing, while these have a hiring freeze, and they're not making money. So it's it's more optimistic, but it's
Yeah.
not just green shoots from.
Yeah. No. That is a really good point. And you are 100% right there, Ramsey. Green shoots, you're not harvesting. Yeah. You have not got fruit, vegetables that you're going to be eating. Green shoots is the start of positivity and becoming a little bit more optimistic. Yeah, a lot of things are impacting it. So inflation has been really high.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's a lady called Liz Truss who the UK was prime minister for like 40 days or something. People blame her for high inflation in the UK. I think she probably didn't cause inflation in the US or the EU because everybody has had pretty high inflation. And what's happened is all the countries have increased interest rates to mitigate or reduce that inflation. But what that's done is companies borrow money just like house owners. So, a lot of companies are refinancing in 2024. And if you were looking to refinance in 2024, in 2023, you weren't sure what those rates were going to be. So you were a
Yeah.
bit nervous. Cost of borrowing has gone up, but it's also not gone up as much as people feared it could do. And also there's a new game in town called the Rule of 40, which I'm going to go into a little bit later on. You may have not heard of that, but I think that's had a
No.
big impact on our industry.
Before we get there, though, like
Yeah.
you mentioned, this is not the first downturn that you've witnessed. I graduated university in 2009. It was in the middle of a downturn, like, or at the end of a downturn,
Yeah.
and I got hired towards the end of that. But like, what have you seen with other downturns in terms of like, is it similar to what we're seeing today, or is what we're seeing today unique?
A little bit of both, I'd say, Ramsey. Um, the causes of downturns are different. So the ones that I look back to are 2001.
Yeah.
We called it the dot-com bust. It was actually named the dot-com bubble, where if you could start anything that was online, people would give you millions of dollars of investment just to try some idea. Went completely wrong in 2001 and really, resulted in difficulties for our industry, layoffs, etc. 2008, that was really the financial crisis. Yeah, we all know, who caused that. We all blame the investment bankers for subprime lending, etc. But again, the consequences are people aren't buying, customers aren't buying. So in which case companies start to reduce cost and make layoffs. I think the only thing that history will define is what was the cause of the current and what year will we use as the one that we remember.
Right.
Will we call it the pandemic or will we call it something else like inflation or the Ukraine war that started it? I think history in a few years' time will tell us that.
Right. Okay. So all these macro things that are happening are actually, you mentioned the rule of 40. I want to know what that means and what it is, and maybe I can tie those two together.
Yeah, no. The rule of 40, before we do that, let's just start about what it was like before the rule of 40 became ubiquitous.
Okay.
Salesforce was one of the first companies in the world, it's been around quite a long time, where the stock market valued them just on their growth rate. They didn't make profit. Nobody cared, but they were growing at a huge, impressive revenue growth rate. So that all changed probably 1 or 2 years ago. And it was no longer fashionable to just have an amazing growth rate. So what the rule of 40 says is that your percentage revenue growth plus your percentage profit margin should be 40 or exceed 40. So if you're a company that's growing at more than 40%, you're good. You're golden. You don't need to make profit. If you're a company that's growing at 10%, 20%, which is still pretty impressive, you need to be profitable and have a margin of, 30 or 20 or 30% as well. So to do that, the only option is really, is really to cut costs as an organization. So if you want to go from great growth to rule of 40, time to start looking at the costs in the business.
So when we're talking about growth, we're talking about revenue growth, right? Not like
Yes.
people growth or anything like that. It's just
no, we're talking about revenue growth. We're talking about top line. Our turnover, our revenue as an organization is
right.
X.
So logically speaking, one would expect if there's revenue growth, there should be profit. But what you're saying is that doesn't always happen because in order to get revenue, sometimes you have to spend a lot more money. And therefore,
absolutely.
no profit.
It's particularly if you're a company that's scaling,
right?
You're going to have to invest.
Right.
You're going to be hiring people. You're going to be renting offices, etc., in countries before you even have revenue. You might have tried to build revenue from afar, but you are pretty much not going to be profitable. So you're going to be investing heavily in those, and the amount you invest is going to impact that cost level.
Right. That's why you have investors, because you have basically zero money as a startup, and you still need to invest in order to get revenue and then one day get profit.
Investors really help with that because investors put money into the business and then you're going to go and grow quicker. Some companies really pride themselves on being bootstrapped, which means that you didn't necessarily take a lot of external investment. You just use the cash flow generated by the sales team to manage your scaling and growth.
Okay. All right. How does all that affect sales engineers? Sales engineer leaders and companies that are
okay. So a lot of it affects sales engineers in a little bit negatively, if I'm honest. So it can result in layoffs for organizations, and it can impact the SE team. The good news is SEs are probably one of the last teams in an organization that gets impacted because they're really difficult to recruit and build up the relevant skills. It can also impact you with a hiring freeze. So if you're being asked to deliver increased revenue targets, but you're not getting to hire any additional people due to a hiring freeze, that is going to have a negative impact on you. And also something that I always smile at is there's a real trend to move functions to high value centers. Yeah. You could sort of look at those or call those as low cost centers. So for example, there could be Mexico, it could be Poland, which functions are you going to move out there? Typically they're jobs that can be done remotely and that reduces the cost significantly.
Actually, that's a question that I've been a field SE or field sales for a very long time. And so I feel safe. They're not going to move me to Mexico if my customers are in Ottawa. But a lot of the newer companies, they're not hiring field SEs. Are you seeing companies hiring field SEs or remote SEs or anything in between?
Okay, so let me come back to that one in a minute. So typical functions that are getting moved to high value centers are, customer success can be done quite often remotely. A lot of the back office functions. So, collateral build, etc., can be done as well. Pre-sales is a bit different. Pre-sales is a bit different. So a lot of pre-sales need to be in front of the customer. Even post-pandemic, people buy from people and they want to be face-to-face. However, even with that, there will be what I would call a hybrid model where you will take some part of the pre-sales process or some part of the pre-sales capacity and maybe move it to one of these centers. So it is something I've actually done myself. So I've had to build like a mobile app build team in India or an RFP and demo build team in Eastern Europe, etc. So that was probably a few years ago. but I
Yeah.
see that as fairly common now and possibly even accelerating.
Well,
But you
so
want that blend. You want
yeah.
people in the field and maybe some back office function that's helping those people in the field be more successful.
It also sounds like it might impact the way sales engineering is viewed because a lot of companies, their sales engineers are the ones responsible for the RFPs. They do their own demo build and demo environment. Whereas what you're saying is that at least in one company that you worked for, you've separated those functions where the SE still does the demo and is responsible for the RFP, but there's an entire team that actually puts in the work to create them and maintain them. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, and that is great perception there, Ramsey. So let me just talk a little bit about that as well. So, um, people quite often have an emotional response, or they have like a more rational response to this
Yeah.
kind of thing. Number one is, hey, they're stealing our jobs. Hey, they won't be able to do things as well as I can because my customer loves me. However, what I think we should do is actually embrace that new model. You can't fight things at that level. It's like you can't really impact the economy. So if you embrace it, you should make sure that that offshore or nearshore function maybe is part of the SE team. So it's not completely separate, in which case the field SE team is the face of the organization to the customer, to the sales organization. But you're working smart. So, for
Yeah.
example, what we used to focus on was moving, simple repetitive jobs to Romania and RFP response. You don't abdicate responsibility for the quality of the RFP,
Yeah.
but you might get somebody to fill in all the easy repetitive questions that you've done a million times.
Yeah.
Demo build is another great one as well. So quite often demo build, you might need to lock yourself in a room for a few days. You're not doing customer facing work. Maybe that demo build could be done by somebody offshore under your direction, for example.
Yeah.
Another great example, if they've got pretty good language skills, pretty good presentation skills, maybe some webinars. They're a much safer environment than a customer meeting because you tend to either have no questions or pre-recorded questions. So again,
Yeah.
great ideas.
It's fine. I've never met an SE who wants to do an RFP, right?
It used to be
But
one of my interview questions, and if anyone ever said I like doing RFPs, I used to worry.
yeah.
It used to be a red
Well,
flag.
that's a lie right there. But yeah, like so the emotional response, but still like it has like why are they taking this away from me? What else are they going to take away? But what you're doing in fact is just freeing them up to do what they're best at, which is interacting with customers and talking technology and helping solution something with the customer. And somebody else does the back end stuff, at least some of it, right? Uh,
Yeah, the way to think about it is these offshore centers can make you look great.
yeah.
They are doing a lot of things, preparing things for you to look amazing in front of customers. Your revenue impact or numbers are going to look amazing because you are just doing high value things.
Yeah. And that's kind of the rational response.
I think that's the rational response. I have seen people embrace it, and the people that embrace it and make it work do well. Because they do deliver more revenue, higher impact activities. They enjoy it more.
So we're talking about this like from an SE's perspective, but also from
Yeah.
a like you're an SE leader and you kind of created that or you ran with that. But you had probably, I don't know, do you have other managers reporting into you?
Yes.
How was their feeling? Did they have the rational response or the emotional response or a combination of both? How did they manage the situation? Because I'm assuming the RFP team and the demo build team does not report into the SE manager. They might report into you, like through the tree, or do they report?
I've had RFP teams report into me, but it's not usual.
Okay.
Demo build teams usually are part of the SE organization at some level. They may report in globally, and you may not have
Right.
any sort of direct control locally.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So that's my
it's
thought. Like,
gone.
how do they deal with that? Like, all right, I'm losing control of my SE doing this stuff, and it's going to somebody else that I don't control anymore. How do SE managers like handle that rationally and emotionally?
At the end of the day, SE leaders and SEs are people, and people all react to things differently. So again, it's a change management exercise. There will be some people who are very negative towards it, they don't embrace it, etc. You then have to make sure that people that do embrace it, you always have those kind of like leading individuals, and publicize the fact that they are being, more successful by doing so. It is just a change management exercise, and yeah, you typically get to a point where it works really well, and people start to go, actually, we should invest more in that offshore resource because they can deliver things like create video content that I don't want to spend time doing, that I can then ship out to the customer after my demo, etc.
So you're saying it's a change management exercise, and I know there's like a whole like training about change management, but I've been in places where they do change management in the following way. You sign a contract with us that you're going to do everything we tell you to do, and if you don't do it, you're breaking your contract, therefore you can get fired. For example, they moved us from Oracle to
Yeah.
Salesforce, and now they want the SE more active and putting in more tasks into Salesforce. SEs rebelled, and that was the response. What is the actual way? Like, how did you go through that change management exercise? I know it's not the topic of today, but I am curious.
Yeah, no. Okay, so I'll spend a very brief amount of time on it. So that's all about your leadership. Okay, so it's all about painting your vision and your values. What does that future state look like? Yeah, and then you roll your values into it as well. However, SEs are some of the most logical people in an organization. Yeah, so the most important question for them is why.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have, and it's where you should start in change management, start with the why. For example, when I first did it in Oracle, the ERP team was this negative margin. It was losing money. Okay. And by having this offshore resource meant it would become positive, profitable. So again, just be transparent with the SEs because they're smart people. They are logical. Right. If you have got good reasons for what you're doing, they typically buy into it.
So you went from like your job being at risk to now you can be more productive because somebody else is doing something for you, and your job is not at risk because we're revenue positive versus revenue negative or profit positive.
Yeah. And it's like if you have that conversation, like
the
way the conversation normally goes with RFPs, it's like, well, do you like doing RFPs? No. Well, here's some people that will help with RFPs. Okay. And then the actual thing follow up is like, you need to keep some responsibility for RFPs. You can't just throw them over the fence.
You're not abdicating that response. But it sounds like a lot of the things that you're talking about, like demo builds and RFP responses, a lot of that could be also automated. Right? Yeah. It's not just offshoring them. There's automation, there's a lot of AI that's coming out, which by the way reminds me like the .com bubble. Anything that had a .com in it that was gonna get some money. It sounds like AI, everything that has .ai in it right now.
It's very similar.
It's going through the same thing. So hopefully that doesn't bust. The AI bust AI bubble.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so a few words that you'll quite often hear, particularly from the financial side of the house. It's like it's all about doing more with less. They don't necessarily say that. But then they use words like efficiency and effectiveness. Yeah, those are two of the most common words used by financial people. So again, you just talked about automation. Historically, there wasn't great automation for solution engineering or sales engineering. Now there is some really strong automation. So that absolutely should be part of the mix. What are we going to move to somewhere else? What are we going to automate? But also, it's quite important that you don't automate a suboptimal process.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to look at some of those processes that you've got and say, hey, could we change these and make them a little bit better before you automate them? I think that's probably been an adage for a real long time. Because what you really want to try and do is improve that win rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we aren't there to qualify the opportunities. We want the salespeople to do a better job of qualifying opportunities. But we want to make sure maybe we want to do better discovery. Maybe we want to do better delivery, a little bit more theater and performance in terms of our demos. And we also want to think about what's the cost of sale. So things like as soon as you propose a POC, you increase the cost of sale significantly. So again, let's think about this is a little bit more like it could be our own money, and let's do the minimum to make sure that we beat the competition and win the opportunity.
It's funny, a lot of SEs don't think about the financial side of it. Like I have SEs on my team that don't even know, like they're tied to my quota. They don't even know how much I'm selling or not selling. They
Really?
don't ask. I have to tell
Yeah.
them. They don't know if their job is at risk. They don't care about that sort of thing. But the world around them cares.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are decisions that happen around them and they don't understand why because they're not thinking about money. But in the end, you're part of an organization that's trying to make money.
Yeah.
So everything revolves around that. And the more we understand that, and I feel like the higher up you become part of the team, like a manager, well, hopefully before you're a manager, you start looking at the finances and all that.
Yeah. I would say that all the SEs are on a spectrum.
Yeah.
One spectrum is very, very technical, almost like a support or a developer.
Yes.
One end of the spectrum is really, really commercial, like a salesperson.
Yeah.
And we're all on there. Sometimes you actually need those super technical people who don't care about the finance, but they are amazing with some of the things they can do.
Yeah.
And it is. And the more you progress across that spectrum, the more you become financially aware, you think about the cost of sale. Hey, one
Yeah.
day you might even make that jump across to be a
Well,
salesperson, for example.
so my current SE is on that far side of the spectrum, the technical support kind of
Yeah.
the spectrum. Whereas when I was an SE, I was on the commercial side. Like I was halfway in between the technical and the pure sales. And I guess that's why I got shifted out of that and into sales because I started talking about money. Yeah.
So the real question there is, does your SE need to be that technical? Or can they maintain that level of technical capability, but add in some commercial awareness that will make them even more effective as an SE?
I don't know if I don't know if they need to be commercially aware, but there are some skills that we talk about all the time that I would prefer if he would work on, to become more like relationship, more focusing on the relationship, not the commercial side. Like I don't want you to talk about money. Like I can handle that, but as SEs, especially like in that's my specific case, he can build a great relationship because when I was an SE, I got most of my leads from my salesperson.
Yeah.
I'm an enterprise sale. I got 90% of the leads for my salesperson.
Yeah.
And I feel like if there's a good SE who works with the enterprise, they should be the first point of contact for the customer because they're the technical person and they bring in the leads. But with my SE, that's not currently the case. For some, like he brings me a lot of leads, but I feel like if he had better relationship building skills, he would get me more. But he's
It's a
great.
topic probably for another
Yeah.
podcast, but
Yeah.
I used to sort of divide the team into a little bit like transactional versus relational.
Yeah.
Transactional, short demos, limited preparation. Relational is where you are doing a pretty complex B2B type sale that might be worth 7+ figures.
So I feel like for enterprise, it has to be more relational, right?
Yeah,
like, whereas, for SMBs or like things that are more transactional, technical is good. But yeah, I think we're off topic completely. Where were we? So, all right, let me ask this then. Like, a lot of engineers look to get into sales engineering, and they usually are on that technical side, the support side, rather than the commercial side.
Yeah.
How do you find SEs like as a manager? that you know can build that commercial side?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So it's really a judgment call. You know, it's like, has this person got an interest in the sales process, selling things? You know, do they have a little bit of industry knowledge? Do they have a little bit of commercial acumen? Can they interact, you know, good interpersonal skills, you know, verbal, written? Can they hold a conversation with a customer, understand what the customer needs? Can they then articulate that you have the best solution for that customer and deliver it in a you know, a great way that's, you know, that's authentic and realistic? So you're making a judgment call on somebody's potential rather than what they're doing at that point in time.
So, all right, then it's a judgment call. We don't know 100%. What are like, have you ever had a bad hire, and what was the impact of that?
Have I had a bad hire? Yeah, if you hire enough people, you will have a bad hire. You never make a bad hire intentionally. When you're hiring, you set off with an expectation of like, this is what I'm looking for, and you're doing a checklist of like, they've got this, got that, got the other. There'll be times where you're making a judgment call on an envelope. You know, we think we've seen this person exhibit this capability. They've given us examples. We believe they can do it. Yeah, if you hire enough people, you will get some of those things wrong. Impact wise, it is pretty huge. You know, so there's a little adage in hiring: if in doubt, the answer is no, because to unpick a bad hire is very costly in terms of money and time and impact on the team. If you bring somebody who's a non-performer into the team, it brings the team down a bit, you know, and then you have to do something about it. And if you're not seen to do something about it, the team stays down. It's just,
Yeah.
we have to do it as SE leaders. It will happen. But again, try and avoid it if you can.
Well, like sales engineering is the weirdest job where like, if you're hiring a software developer, the interview is usually with other software developers, and the manager has the decision, like capacity to make the decision, yes or no. Sales engineering, you have to interview with like 6 different types of people. You have to probably interview with an SE manager, sales, who may have a different perception of what an SE is, because a lot of salespeople think SEs are my assistant rather than my partner. So if an SE comes in too strong, the salesperson might not like him, but the SE team might love him. Or if the SE comes in too weak, the SE team might hate him, but the salesperson might love him because this guy's going to do everything, or this girl's going to do everything I asked them to do.
So one thing that's worked really well for me is like, okay, on the developer side, these days you quite often get asked to write some code.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's quite often a test. What I do is quite often get somebody to come in and pitch something. Yeah, and I go, you don't need to pitch what our company is currently selling. I'm happy for you to pitch anything, because I want you to be really comfortable with what you're pitching so I can see you at your best. And it's really telling. You know, a good SC takes control from the start. You know, whether it's, if it's in a room setting up some AV, that's always you know, a real thing. Getting on the internet. So again, you can just see it, and then you role play as if you are a customer and you're asking questions, and you're looking for how they answer questions as well, even if they don't know the answer.
So there's one guy that I vetoed. I didn't have the capacity to veto, but I tried. And he still did the presentation, did the demo. My manager was in doubt, but he was under high pressure to hire an SE because we just lost the SE that was in the territory. The sales director was pushing, the VP of sales was pushing, and we didn't have too many candidates. So he got hired. And for an entire year, I was doing his job and my job after I had said no. Right. And then he got fired a year later. So basically, and there were times where I couldn't support the salesperson because I was busy. I was tied one-to-one with my own. I just didn't have time. So there was so many opportunities.
That's just what we were talking about earlier, wasn't it? Like the impact is not just on, it's on the team.
Yeah.
The hiring manager has to go through a process. The team get impacted. Really something to try and avoid.
And I got on bad terms with that manager because I was this guy's mentor after I had said no. and then he didn't do well, and I was blamed as the mentor that I didn't do well with this guy. And
Nice.
it wasn't
Nice.
until they put in another mentor who said the same thing that I did. It's like, hi, maybe it was Ramsey's fault. So
That is when things are getting political, and when things get political, it gets
yeah,
difficult.
yeah. So yeah. Um, you mentioned like do less with more.
No, do more with less.
Do more with less. Yeah. Oh, my brain is doing less with less latencies.
Yeah.
But like on the other end, like right now in that situation, we were doing
Yeah.
more with less because there was 1.5 SE doing the
Yeah.
jobs of 2 or 3, and like it really impacted me in a negative way. I didn't have a life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We,
Oh, well,
we
okay. So let me just talk a little bit about that. I think so. That was a difficult situation
yeah,
because you had headcount, you were paying somebody, but you actually impacted the whole team by reducing the ability or capacity of that team.
yeah,
But there probably weren't a lot of options.
yeah,
One thing, yeah, we were talking about is like, what about outside resources? If you look at industry and functions, a lot of functions can be, you know, agency or contract staff. We don't have that in the pre-sales world, and it's like, why isn't that? Is it because um, you need to ramp them? Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. You've got to work closely together with an external. Is it are you able to hire them later on? How long do you contract with them for? And one thing I'm sort of thinking is like, could that be an SE lifestyle choice? For some of the younger generations, do they really want a 9 to 5 job, 52 weeks a year? Maybe they want to work 9 months a year and do some travel, for example. So, is there a model where you can have somebody that's not, an employee, but really delivering a high quality SE job for you?
there might be a model, but we'll discuss that later at a later date. Okay. So there's a big fear of hiring external. For some reason with SEs, there's a big fear. Like a lot of companies hire external, like SDRs and BDRs, or like they might have one contract SE.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a contract SE if I recall correctly.
Yeah. I inherited a contract SE through an acquisition that we made.
Right. So you didn't choose to have a contract SE, but you inherited that. How did that go?
Yeah. He was brilliant. It was actually interesting because he was based out of Israel, but he would come over, work with us in the UK on every second week. I just treated him as part of the team. He is remunerated differently. He was an absolute expert in the product that we acquired, and he was a great guy. We got on really well. We had fun together. That's how we should see it. In the world of development, I think contractors are pretty common. They brought in for certain skills for a certain project. It works well. I don't know why it's not more common.
Okay. Well, I feel like a lot of times SEs get hired. The major problem that companies have and why they want to hire an SE is they don't really have an SE process. So they have to bring someone in and they can't really train them. They have to be with them and show them like, all right, this is how we do things. There's no process, but this is how we figured out how to do it. So if you have an SE process and you can use, then it'll be easier to just plug someone in and they will just follow the process. And if you don't, then you might need to optimize the SE process.
This is a great topic for a future conversation.
Yeah.
Because the way these things usually evolve, finance people love employing a load of salespeople because they go, salespeople times their target is like how much revenue we can deliver, or assuming how many make target.
Yeah.
SEs, it's like, okay, we need some SEs because the salespeople can't do everything and it's not great use of their time. So imagine you've got a team of 10 salespeople. You might have 2 SEs. So you haven't got an SE leader because you need people actually delivering. So you've got 2 people. They may not have the level of experience to know what good process looks like, etc. So how do you get out of that? How do you get to a point where that, those two people have a great work-life balance, they have really efficient processes, they have really high win rates, they feel good career progression. I think it's a challenge. Sometimes they turn to external coaching, for example. That's another
Yep.
good way of picking those kind of things up and working with people who've got experience of building and scaling those teams. But another
Yep.
topic there, Ramsey, for another
Yep.
time.
Well, so I actually I have coached many people in that situation. Because they end up needing to build a process. They end up going after the wrong customer. Because salespeople want to go after everybody. So, but there's 10 salespeople and 2 SEs, and the SEs can't jump on every call. So the SEs have to decide, like, is this the right customer? Is this the wrong customer? So yeah, like, I am biased. I love coaching. So, and I do that. So I think that's a.
I think that is possibly the only real solution. I can't see another way of doing it. Salespeople aren't going to be good at coaching solution engineers.
Oh no, but
they will have opinions, but they may not be helpful. You might be reporting with the sales team into a sales leader who understands salespeople and how to motivate and drive salespeople, but it's very different to the way you'd want to motivate and drive SEs.
Well, even the process is different. And so that's the thing. It's like it ends up being one process for the salespeople who modify that as they see fit, and 2 processes, one for each SE that may or may not integrate with the sales process. And now everybody's just fighting with everybody, and
and well, there's so many things wrong with that. How do you get the 2 SEs to agree? Imagine they're just peers.
Yep.
And they're debating, for example, how you put a request in from sales and the criteria for supporting it. Maybe it's a revenue number. Yep. How do you get them to agree? What's the right revenue number? And what's the right way to put a request in, whether it's through Salesforce or through an email or come and talk to you kind of thing? It's like,
and it's doable.
Flawed.
It's doable if you have 2 senior SEs.
And they collaborate.
And
because you might have to, if they're 2 senior SEs, they might be competing for that SE team lead role when the team grows big enough.
Yeah, exactly. And if they're 2 junior SEs, then you're kind of, it's not going to work. Like I've
got a different problem there, Ramsey.
Yeah, we'll leave that for another day. Why? Like, so one of the things that I see is that there's 10 salespeople and 1 SE or 2 SEs, and there is no work-life balance. The SEs are used as demo jockeys more than partners who do proper discovery. Why do you think there's only 2 SEs? When a company starts, they hire all these salespeople and like 2 SEs or 1 SE.
It's finance. It's a financial decision. It is back to that model of like, people used to call them QCRs, quota carrying reps, etc. Yeah. So if you're a salesperson, you are easily justified. Hey, you've got a target of $1 million. I've got 10 of you. I know that we can generate, $5 to $10 million. As soon as you're a supporting function, it could be an RFP team, it could be a demo build team, it could be an SE, you're a cost to the business. Yeah. So you don't want to have too many. I have been in a situation once where I used to get a 1-to-1 ratio, but that was incredibly rare. But we were selling such a high value product, and the salespeople had significant targets. It made it profitable. So, nowadays, with a lot of the cloud products, that's not the case. Yeah. So you typically get a ratio of anything from 4-to-1 to maybe even 10-to-1, depending on the transactional or relational.
I have a 1-to-1 ratio. I know SEs like at VMware, enterprise SEs had 3-to-1 ratio, which is doable. But
1-to-1 is the easiest one to manage because there's no capacity or request required.
Yes,
like, hey, you've got an SE. If you want them to do something else, decide what you're going to stop them doing.
Yeah, but like that ends up being a lot like marriage counseling for the manager, right? Versus so because you're tied 1-to-1, and if you have one bad apple in that pairing, you're kind of screwed. Or if they don't mesh. So that's
true. That's a different thing. Yeah, you're right. That is in the the time to change things around.
So
that's what you can do.
Because of my position as like and someone who loves sales engineering but is now in sales, I get on calls with SEs who complain about their salespeople. I get on calls with salespeople who complain about their SEs, and I'm like, have you talked to each other? Have you thought about that? So, okay.
I've had
I
some
mean,
pretty extreme cases where it's like I actually had to ask somebody to leave the organization because of their interactions weren't
yeah,
working big time.
yeah, yeah. No, I can see that, because once the SE and the salespeople, if they don't
Yeah.
see eye to eye and they don't work
Yeah.
to improve that relationship, like one of them has to go,
Yeah,
whether
well,
they're
so
shifted to
sometimes it
another.
could just be incompatibility. It could be just like
Yeah,
a character, a clash of characters. In which
so it could
case,
be
moving things around can work.
exactly.
Sometimes it's like this individual has not got the right character to be
Yeah,
in
to be an
this
SE
company.
in general. Yeah,
Or in this company.
yeah. So yeah, okay. So we talked about a lot of different things
Yeah.
today, and I feel like each one of those we can actually dig in and like this
Oh yeah.
dissect. Um, so we'll just leave it at that. If anybody has any questions, make sure to connect with us on LinkedIn. So I mentioned at the beginning, we are working on something. So if you want to stay up to date on what we're working on, it's secret right now. It's like in a secret stage. But as soon as we have it ready and we want to share it with people to help CROs, SE leaders, anybody in that sales function, or even, well, I've been doing coaching for a long time. So if you just follow us if you want to learn more. John's LinkedIn was going to be on the show notes for this episode, which is show 313. And if you can also sign up to the newsletter on wetheSalesEngineers.com because I will announce it I'll send an email out announcing it to folks as well. Any final thoughts, John, before we get going?
No, I think that is a pretty great summary there, Ramsey. Obviously, I've taught you about green shoots.
Yep.
I actually think the second half of 2024 is where things start to head upwards, which is going to be great. Our industry is fantastic. So yeah, here's to a great 2024 for all the listeners.
Yes, I second that. And third that, because some people say I'm as big as two people, but hey, that's a different conversation as well. We'll leave it there before I embarrass myself too much. John, thank you for coming on, and I'm gonna sign off on our behalf. So for John, this is me, Ramsey, signing off.